Is that what we
Pretty
do?
much, yeah.
Yes.
Should be
It's
good.
been a
We
while.
should be able to synchronize the audio that way. That's the idea.
All right.
I mean, aside from the mental preparation I need to have to think about the fact that you just watched a movie, a new Marvel movie.
Yeah, it was called Thor something or other. Oh, wait, it was Thor: Love and Thunder. Yes, and it was a very bad title for a very bad. The way they came around to the title was stupid.
Love and Thunder?
Yes,
Ugh.
it was called Love and Thunder.
That makes me feel sick.
It'll really make you feel sick when you find out why they called it Love and Thunder.
Oh boy.
There's just like
that's. No, go ahead. No, sure, go ahead.
Marvel is just some kind of disjointed sect of a cult at this point.
Uh-huh.
Because they can't put a movie together in anything short of some kind of randomized Lego brick manner. And this This is like the
the writing or the plot or what?
Oh, it's so bad.
Everything.
For starters, this is one of, if not the most annoying movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Annoying. Is it more annoying or less annoying than the most annoying sound ever?
So it's funny you should bring that up.
Oh.
It's really funny you should bring that up.
Well, I didn't expect this conversation to go this way.
No, you didn't. I am amazed. When I saw this thing in this movie, that was the first thing I thought of, was the most annoying sound in the universe. I was like, ooh, it's a Dumb and Dumber callback. All right.
A Dumb and Dumber callback in a Marvel movie.
Yes, in a Marvel movie. An unintended Dumb and Dumber callback in a Marvel movie.
Ooh. Oh no, that's even worse.
I'll skip over the first, 6 minutes of the movie that built up to that particular part just to get to it. But the writers of the movie had what, in many contexts, would have been a great joke. Wherein, after saving a world, I guess, or something, I'm not entirely sure what was saved, but someone somewhere was saved, and this group of religious fanatics or something that were on the planet, whose temple Thor had destroyed, which they were angry about, because they are, because one of them said he was angry about it and didn't want to talk about it, but they still rewarded him with some goats. Some gigantic screaming goats, which, on its face, it's just like, here, this is your present for saving our world, but also destroying our temple. So you're getting a present, like these giant goats, which may or may not be useful to you, whatever, but they also scream really loudly, doing goat screams. That's kind of funny. It's...
Maybe... Yeah, okay, I can see that it could be funny.
Just a way to open the movie.
Careful not to overexpose it, sure.
Yeah, you do have to be careful to overexpose it. They were persistent throughout the whole movie.
Why?
Because this movie wanted to be the most annoying movie on the planet. Unintentionally.
But
or maybe not.
Being annoying.
Maybe there's someone somewhere who was like, you know what? I just want to annoy people. I'm putting these goats in this movie, and people are going to deal with these goats all through the movie. They're just going to keep showing up, and they're going to keep screaming, and even all the way till the end of the movie, they just kept showing up and screaming for no reason, even during action scenes.
During action scenes?
During the main battle at the end of the movie.
A giant goat shows up and screams.
Two of them. They couldn't do just one. That wouldn't be annoying enough.
I can't believe I'm hearing this.
They were the only thing persistent throughout the movie, besides the characters that were in the movie that I'm not sure if they count. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. So, in what has been the typical fashion of Marvel movies since I'm going to say either Civil War, maybe be a bit more generous and say, Infinity Wars. We'll say Infinity Wars.
Okay. Sure.
Marvel likes to open, especially their last two Thor movies, they like to open it with some other alternate adventure that looked a lot more interesting than what the rest of the movie ended up being. And always at the tail end of it, so you get to see Thor, fighting off some bad guys or whatever, because every single Marvel movie has to use the exact same script. And when they made the first Thor movie, it started with him in whateversville, Asgard, going to fight frost giants and having a big battle with the frost giants at the beginning of the movie, which in that movie was, a little cool.
Well, I mean, you can get away with doing that a few times, but you can't do it over and over and over again. It can't be. I mean, as a plot point, it makes sense to start with the hero on the tail end of some mission, so you can see the mop up, but not like all of the planning and etc. that went into it. I mean, then you see the hero, finish something. And there's a little triumphant moment as well as a little action that gets the eyes on the screen, right? And then you start the actual plot of the movie after that. That as a device, it makes sense. I mean, I can see using that. It's just that you wouldn't want to do it every time,
Well, I mean, see, putting aside the fact that in the first movie it was relevant to what unfolded throughout the movie because it gave us more information about the characters, and that this movie did not do that. I honestly think that part of the movie was just Christopher Pratt and the crew from Guardians of the Galaxy collecting a paycheck because they were in that part, but no other part of the movie.
Well, there is that, yeah. I mean, if the movie juggernaut that is what's his name's Bad Robot shows us anything, it's that part of what you do when you're making a big budget movie is you get cameos of all your best friends and get them paid money. Which
is, I mean, largely what happened here. But I mean, you say that you can't get away with doing that repeatedly. But it seems like they can. It seems like the approach here is just keep tasing people until they can't take it anymore, and then tase them more.
Uh-huh.
That's what happened. So this whole opening scene was just, fancy, flashy CGI that did not look very good at all.
Well, you say fancy, flashy, but what made it not look good?
Well, what made it not look good is that they were portraying a war and a battle happening between, two groups of people, but they did it in a way that was like a 1970s kind of like old Doctor Who, where they would just keep having the same Daleks walking in and out of a door, to make it look like there were lots of them. Now, it wasn't quite...
No, hold on, stop. You're describing something that sounds like something you would do because of a lack of budget.
Oh, no, there was definitely budget here. They spent a lot of money on...
No, that's my point, though. You're describing this scene where the same Dalek walks through the door to give the illusion that there are multiple Daleks. And I can see doing that in a movie that has a low budget, or in a TV show that has a low budget. But this is a AAA Marvel movie, and they shouldn't have to do anything like that, so why are they?
Well, I mean, using AAA loosely here, what they were trying to do, I believe, is have an opening scene that demonstrated the...
I'm using AAA in the collision insurance sense.
That's aptly put. Very aptly put.
There we go.
So, they wanted to open the movie with a nice scene of, hey, remember how at the end of Endgame, Thor took off with the Guardians of the Galaxy? Well, he has to have his own movie now, so we have to get rid of them, but we also have to get them a paycheck, and we have to explain why he's not with them anymore. And that serves no purpose for the rest of the story, other than to explain to you that, oh yeah, he's here now. So they didn't need that whole opening scene. But basically, he shows up.
Well, I mean, if they want to maintain continuity from the previous movie, then they do need this scene, right?
I don't think that it made sense for them to go... I almost feel like they wanted to do a different movie, and they didn't have a script anywhere that fit the movie they actually wanted to do, because nobody in Hollywood writes anymore. They just pull scripts out of a bucket and say, all right, this is going to be the next Thor movie. So
No, they pull pages out of a bucket and put them together to make a script.
Yes, that sounds more like what's... No, that sounds exactly what happened with this movie. Like I said at the beginning, this is not only is this one of the most annoying movies I've ever seen. This is one of the most...
Wait, hold on. Disjointed. Oh, great. No. Okay, so you say this is one of the most annoying movies that you've seen. Is it just the goats, or is it other things that make the movie annoying as well?
It is many other things than the goats.
Oh, God. Because the goats alone would be enough to make me call the movie annoying.
I started to hallucinate another person in the room with me while I was watching this movie, shouting, "What? Stop this. Stop this now."
I was with you in spirit.
Well, I'm glad, because I'm not sure if we could have both survived that mess. There would have to be a sacrifice.
The goats demand a sacrifice?
Yes, the goats demand a sacrifice. Well, I mean, they were screaming about something. They were definitely
the lack of sacrifice, obviously.
I mean, this movie really wanted you to be into these goats. So
yeah, well, okay.
So with this movie, Marvel threw out any pretense of taking anything seriously. Marvel movies are now nothing but, the cheesiest one-liner jokes that they can possibly pass off in the moment, and nobody's actually sitting down to think about whether they're funny or not anymore.
But the whole purpose of one-liners is to be funny or witty, or if you don't take the time to make sure that they are funny or witty, then you shouldn't be putting one-liners in there.
I'm trying to build an image of what this movie is like to someone who...
That's what she said!
No, it's just... I don't know how to get across that this is worse than you're thinking. I'm trying to build a foundation here of what this movie is like for someone who hasn't seen it, and what...
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a start. Start by picturing the movie Airplane. Okay, so you've got that movie fresh in your head, right? Or at least, you've seen it enough to, I'm sure.
Oh, I've seen Airplane a million times.
Okay,
yeah.
Now, imagine every single joke wasn't funny.
What? Then it's not Airplane. Then it's the movie that Airplane was based on. That wasn't funny.
No, it's not. It's not even that. Because it's the same movie, it's just that all of the jokes land flat.
But you couldn't
See, you're making a mistake in thinking that all the jokes have been removed. They haven't been removed, they're just not funny anymore. This is the movie I'm trying to describe to you. This is Airplane minus funny.
So, okay, I'm trying to understand what this would be like. It's like
milk and cereal.
Okay,
but there's not actually milk in the bowl, but there is still liquid in the bowl.
Well, that could be a lot of different kinds of liquid. Now, I'm trying to deepen the Airplane metaphor, right? So, like, this would be if they had that had that lady come in and say, "Oh, I can speak jive," and then the scene just cuts.
Would it be like that,
or would it be different from that? Let's talk about this movie in relation to Airplane, looking at the I speak jive scene in Airplane. What would be changed in the I speak jive scene to make it like this movie?
Okay, so she would have said, "Hold on a second, I understand him and you don't." And then she would have turned to this person and started talking and said something, and then one of them would have insisted that what was said was funny. Oh my God, it's a movie that insists on itself.
Oh God.
Okay,
but the thing about the Marvel movies, from what I understand, is that they have comedic elements, but they're not generally actual, like, full-on comedies.
I mean, the last Thor movie I thought was pretty annoying because that was almost all they were doing was telling jokes, but there was still a semblance of something happening there.
Sure.
And there were things that happened in this movie. I don't know if a single one of them was necessary, but... Okay, so let's start from the beginning. They open the movie with the bad guy. The whole point of the bad guy is this guy named Gore. His daughter's in the desert with him, and she's dying, and he's praying to the gods for help. And no help comes. His daughter dies, and then he stumbles upon an oasis, and he just happens to find the god that he was praying to there. And they were celebrating because they had just killed someone who had something called the Necro Sword. And this Necro Sword is a god-slaying sword.
Okay.
So he's asking this god why he didn't help, and he's starting to get a little angry at the fact that this god was basically like, no, we're here to celebrate this death. I didn't come here to help you. There's, you're just here to worship us. So he, he takes up this sword and he slays this god, and he becomes the God Slayer, and he's just going all over the universe, killing god after god after god, and he's kind of like infected by whatever is in the Necro Sword that's, partially controlling him.
The sword has taken control of him.
Sort of. I mean, sort of. They open kind of okay with that. The dialogue was a bit clunky, but it was like, okay, you got your point across. That's fine. It was really weird to see. So like Christian Bale is playing this role at the beginning of the movie, completely serious, because it's a
of serious... the Godslayer?
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. He's playing the Godslayer.
Okay.
And that was the only reason that I said, yeah, I want to see this movie. I want to see how Christian Bale does this character.
Okay. Is this a character that you already know from previous comics or movies or something?
No. What happened was, when this movie was first announced, I read up on the character, thought it was a good idea, and I said, maybe they'll actually make a cool Thor movie instead of a Gumby and Pokey Thor movie, which is what the last couple have been. And I don't just mean Thor, I mean like Marvel movies are basically Gumby and Pokey at this point, except they're not as charming.
Except Pokey is Loki.
Yeah, there we go. Well, which one was the smart one? Was there a smart one in Gumby and Pokey?
There was no smart one in Gumby and Pokey, no.
I mean, maybe by comparison to the Thor movie, you would be able to say that they were of a higher intelligence. So let's go through a couple of things in this movie that happened. And first off, the irrelevancies. So they fight this battle at the beginning, which was nothing but an excuse to do an action scene with Guns N' Roses music. I believe it was Welcome to the Jungle. And so, like, all of these creatures that were on what looked like stock footage of the thing that Anakin Skywalker rode in the pod races, the little racing pod things.
What?
Yeah, they were these CGI creatures on pod racers were attacking Thor and his group. But they waited until Thor showed up to actually attack on the pod racers. They were just blasting from afar before then because they didn't want to actually show armies at the beginning. So they just had the Guardians of the Galaxy cowering behind rocks and taking pot shots while they were being fired upon from cover. And then when they finally, from a mountaintop far removed from the battlefield, convinced Thor to join the battle, because apparently he never joins the battle until they absolutely ask him because they need him. He enters the fray, and then the bad guys are like, oh, well, that's their tough guy. We should probably jump in our pod racers and go attack him. And he just, barrels through them with his lightning powers and his axe. And, they did a scene where he catches two of them flying towards him by jumping in the air and doing the splits. And then they dragged that scene out way too long before finally having him leap away and letting them crash into each other. It was seriously, I think he was there for a minute of screen time, just holding these things while... Yeah, I guess they wanted to fit more of Welcome of the Jungle into the movie. Not exactly sure what was going on there.
Okay.
I wasn't too clear on why these raiders were interested in taking over this priest's temple, but Thor races in, destroys this temple accidentally while fighting all of these guys, and then comes back, and so all these priests are now angry at him for destroying their temple. But he did save the world, so they give him these screaming goats. None of that has anything to do with the movie, other than the fact that they really wanted to have screaming goats persist throughout the movie. So there's that. I think a bunch of crap happened after that I don't really remember. What the heck happened after that? They get a message on the Guardian of the Galaxy's ship, and it's some message about the Godslayer showing up, and so Thor has to go find another cameo person collecting a check.
So, question. I mean, we have an antagonist, and the antagonist is called the Godslayer, right?
Yes.
And he has a weapon which enables him to preternaturally attack and defeat gods, right?
Yes.
considering that there are a variety of powers in the Marvel Universe that are not gods, does it not make sense to send anyone but a god to fight the Godslayer?
I mean, I think the sword can kill anything, really. It just happens to also be able to kill gods. So I don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, like, I feel like this is a thing that, like, if it wasn't, I feel like it's a targeted thing, and therefore it's like, well, we should send someone who isn't. It's like sending a water type Pokemon against a lightning type Pokemon.
I mean, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like Thor's. I mean, like, okay, so like the like Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy fight on kind of an equal-ish basis, right? Or no?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think Thor is like,
I mean, who's someone who's comparably powerful to Thor in the Marvel Universe?
There's the Hulk.
Why not have the Hulk fight the Godslayer?
There's Doctor Strange. I mean,
well, Doctor Strange is also not a god.
Probably would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah, this sounds like using the wrong tool for the mission. Like, okay, so there was an old TV show back in the day called Mission Impossible, and the whole point of the start of the show was that they would enlist people into the mission who would assist in completing the mission. And these people were carefully chosen to have sets of skills and abilities and strengths that complemented each other, and also made it so that they would be able to get past any expected difficulties in the mission. And this is like, oh, we have a guy who has a sword that kills gods. Let's send a god to him. Why would you do that? There are plenty of people who are not gods who are comparably powerful.
Well, the reason you would do that is because in the comics, Thor is not so much a wisecracker as he is in these movies. He is reliable, honorable. He tends to be very thoughtful of the situation that he's in. Sometimes he reacts brashly because he's putting valor and honor before having a plan, but for the most part, he's supposed to be a thousands-year-old wise character that, from the few impressions I've had of him in the comics with the other Avengers, he's generally, if not smarter, a lot wiser than the rest of them.
Okay.
And that has not been the case in any of the movies. He is there to be a giant lunk of a wisecracker and to have a hammer that he can throw, because cool hammer throw.
Does this change of his character serve the narrative in the movies?
I will need to seek advice on what the narrative was before I can answer that question.
Okay, but you've seen the movies.
I've seen all the Thor movies, yes.
And you don't know what the narrative is?
I do not.
Okay.
Because at the beginning of this movie, we're still in the Guardians of the Galaxy intro scene here. They have one of his friends is narrating the movie, basically. Every once in a while, you get this narration.
I'm cool with that.
Well,
sure.
Well, yeah, as a storytelling device, it is usually not anything bad. Despite how many times the movie was interrupted with it to go over details about things we don't need to know to progress the story. But this movie was like someone somewhere in some crazy mirror world has the saying "tell, don't show," and then they made this movie.
Okay.
Because everything that this guy's narrating throughout the movie is stuff that should just be shown to us, and instead they're going to tell it to us. Oh, and also some of it is just jokes that they're making, but they're not good jokes.
Oh.
So
they fall flat.
Yeah, so it's this guy's telling like this group of kids about the adventures of Thor, presumably at a time when Thor is still around and could tell these adventures himself. In fact, if I recall, I don't think I'm wrong in this. I believe at one point he's narrating the fact that Thor returned to Asgard to tell his tales at a time where Thor is still around and presumably telling these tales at this very minute to other people. So
I see.
That's the narrating we're getting. This is all happening while Thor is quote unquote finding himself. I guess, a couple thousand years just isn't enough for some people.
Are we sure it's the same Thor? It is a comic book movie. Could it be a different character that has the same name?
It is not a different character that has the same name. Although the movie would like you to think otherwise because, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So he spends a good 5 minutes in what I assume they thought was witty banter between him and Chris Pratt, whose name is Chris Pratt. I think he had some name in the Marvel movies, but I don't care anymore.
Okay.
And they were basically doing a thing where there's got to be a better name for him. Star Pratt doesn't do it. We'll just call him Chris Pratt. Where Chris Pratt is telling him that, hey, sometimes you've got to, like, it's better to have loved and lost. Basically, he basically tells him that, and then they're having this conversation about how Thor's going to go his own way, and Chris Pratt is totally cool with that. And Thor is doing that thing where he pretends he didn't notice and keeps going on about how I know you'll miss me and everything, but don't take it too hard. One of them jokes, but it went on too long. They did the same joke 3 times in a row, and it fell flat, completely flat. There was no humor in it, and
what do you mean they did the same joke 3 times in a row?
3 times in a row of him saying, I know that, our parting is going to be difficult for you. And Chris Pratt is like, well, okay, yeah, well, I got to go. 3 times in a row.
To the same character?
Yeah, they're just like, yep, we're going now.
Because if it had been me writing this, what I would have done is I would have had him do this speech. If I was forced to make him repeat this joke 3 times, he would do it to 3 different characters and receive different responses from all 3 of them.
He also does it to several other characters as part of the joke.
Okay.
So it's officially gone on too long at this point.
Okay.
So, we're finally past that. He goes to Asgard, which is like some seaside tourist trap town for some reason now, because Asgard got destroyed in Infinity War, I think, or one of those movies. No, it was the last Thor movie, I think. Thor Ragnarok? Yes, Thor Ragnarok. Yeah,
that would make sense.
It doesn't matter.
Ragnarok is the end of the world.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how they solved the problem, was by destroying Asgard in that movie. And, looking back on it, I didn't like that movie.
Wait a minute. Ragnarok is not the end of Asgard in Norse mythology.
Well, it had to be for the Marvel movies, otherwise they couldn't make this movie.
Oh. Okay, I guess. I don't know. Because Asgard continues to exist after Ragnarok.
Yes, right? As a seaside tourist trap.
Oh. No, but I mean in the mythology. Like it's like Ragnarok. Asgard is heaven, right? Or not Ragnarok. I'm sorry. Asgard is heaven, and then what's the hell one called?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know my.
I mean, there are 3 planes of existence in Norse mythology. There's the upper plane. There's the earth plane, the middle plane, and then there's the lower plane.
Midgard.
And Ragnarok is the end of. Yeah, Midgard, Asgard, and it might be Val something.
No, Valhalla is the heaven that the warriors go to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't matter. None of it matters because none of it is here.
My point is that Ragnarok doesn't signal the end of Asgard, I think, but I guess I'd have to look that up.
I mean, I don't really know anything about it. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But they couldn't have done Thor Ragnarok unless that was the case.
Okay.
And that movie was annoying enough in its own way because most of what happened in the movie didn't have anything to do with the story of the movie.
Okay. You could, I mean, to avoid getting into discussion of Thor Ragnarok, I guess I could say you could do that and make it good, but it sounds like they didn't.
Well, no, they made a totally different movie, inserted it into the middle of what should have been a Thor Ragnarok movie, and then they had the beginning and I think a little bit of the middle, and the end was the actual story to Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, okay. I guess.
But there was this entire middle
okay.
part of the movie where, I don't know, maybe I guess Thor was finding himself again for that part of the movie so he could go do the ending of this movie. Like, he has to find himself before he can end any of his movies each time.
Maybe he's the god of finding himself.
It could be. Could very well be. So let's see how much I can remember of this disjointed mess that I just watched last night, because it is everywhere, and I don't really understand who chose the progression of the story.
Okay.
But he visits. So we've gotten past the Guardian thing. He disappears to go find this one of his friends from the first movie that they're never going to do anything with ever again, because he had a whole crew in that movie, and they were just gone after that. They were nowhere to be seen.
Did they die, or did the team break up for some reason, or did they just vanish?
They just vanish. They're just not part of it anymore. But he finds her on a battlefield where she tells him about the God Slayer, and she's like, "Well, I've died in battle. Now I can go to Valhalla." And they spend the next 2 minutes making a joke about how she can't actually go to Valhalla because she isn't really on the battlefield and isn't really dying. She just lost an arm, but maybe her arm is in Valhalla. So that was a conversation that happened between two people, one of whom thought they were dying.
That could be funny.
It wasn't.
Okay.
I mean, it might have been like chuckle-worthy, maybe a little bit, if you weren't just like, okay, well, are you gonna?
No. So like you could be like, oh, I guess I don't get to go to Valhalla, but maybe my arm does, and then like you cut to like two gods looking at an arm on a table in Valhalla, and they kind of look at each other, and then it cuts back. Like, you could do that.
I mean, if you wanted to do like actual jokes and well-timed jokes and things like that, you could, but it's already a joke fest as it is, so there's no reason there's no reason to think about it. She's sitting there dying on the battlefield, and and just basically Thor is there to A, get information from her, and B, tell her that she's not actually dying and she couldn't go to Valhalla if she did die right now anyway, so haha or something. They're friends, by the way.
What? Okay.
So it's like, I'm going to Valhalla. No, you're not, friend. Thanks. He's going everywhere with this rock friend of his who he's the narrator actually, but he's just there throughout the whole movie, not doing anything.
When you say a rock friend, you mean like a friend who is made of rock?
Yes. He has a friend who is made of rock, who is just this big rock thing, who never does anything in the whole movie, but is just there, persistently there, like the goats, except he's not screaming. He's actually like a counterbalance.
But he is narrating.
He also narrates events throughout the movie. Yeah. But it's not the one that's there present narrating it. He's narrating all of it after it happened, but in real time.
Wow.
So he disappears to this place where this battle happened with the God Slayer that we don't know anything about. And we didn't get to see what happened. There's like a giant god there that's just a corpse, and we didn't get to see how that god died. We're just told that that God was here and there was a battle and now it's dead. And we get.
I mean, you could do that. I mean, you know the point would be that Thor is trying to figure out what's going on, and they don't tell us because they want us to participate in thinking about what's happening and putting the pieces together as Thor does throughout the movie. That's how you would do that, right?
It is, but we don't know anything about why this battle took place here. Why...
Well, I mean, all we need to know is that there's a god, and the God Slayer slayed the god, and if Thor's trying to go kill the God Slayer, he has to basically use this information to track and figure out where the God Slayer is going to show up next. That'd be my take on that.
Well, yeah, sure, but the point is, this is like an empty battlefield. They tell you it's a battlefield. There's like two corpses in the battlefield, and then there's like one dying friend that's leaning up against one of the corpses, and this dying friend whom he could home on.
But again, yeah, go ahead.
This dying friend that he could home in on for some reason that I don't understand. Yeah. He just found her immediately, and which. I'm not even going to get into the question of how was he able to know exactly where this person was with his magic teleport stick, but he couldn't find these children that get kidnapped later on. whatever, not a big deal. So he finds her immediately, and she has the information that he needs, and that's what the scene is there for. Like, this whole scene didn't need to be in the movie. He could have immediately gone to the next destination that they go to.
Well, I mean, is it building tension?
No, it's building joke that isn't funny.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring this up because I just watched this last night. Last night I watched the movie Aliens, the James Cameron film from the 80s, you know?
Yes.
And you know, they land on the planet and they go into the colony and there's nothing there. There's just nothing there. There's signs of a battle. But no people, no corpses, no blood, no nothing. And part of what they do in that movie is they build tension, you know, and they're like, okay, but they also build like mystery, like what happened to all the people, you know, and then you're building tension of like, are they going to come up on something? And you know, eventually they do come up on something, and you know, the movie progresses from there, but it sounds like they didn't do something like that here.
No, they didn't. Two dudes show up.
Yeah. I guess my point is that they could have gone there without knowing that the Godslayer was gone, and they're vulnerable. They don't have enough information, and so they get there, and they're like, "Well, is the Godslayer here? Is he going to ambush us?" You know, and so they find the friend, and the friend is giving them information, and all the time they're getting information from the friend. They're like, you know, okay, you know, does this mean for sure that the Godslayer's gone? Does this mean that you know we aren't under an ambush? Could this be some kind of a ruse? You know, you could do that, but it sounds like they didn't do that here.
Not at all. Okay. I'm trying to picture the boardroom meeting for this scene, and it's just like, okay, well, we need to get the woman that played Lady Sif in the first movie another paycheck. So how are we going to do that? All right, we'll have a scene where she's the one that divulges the information that Thor needs, but doesn't really need. Now that I think about it, he didn't need to talk to her about anything. Now that I think about it, oh well. So
what do you mean? Well, didn't she give him information on where to go or what to do?
Well, the scene that follows is the one where he goes to seaside Asgard, and immediately when he arrives is the moment where the bad guy is attacking. You know, just like, not going to say this is like a major coincidence or anything, but bam, he's there right at that moment, which is, I mean, the movie hasn't even fallen apart yet. You don't even understand. So he's on this desolate battlefield. Two guys on a mountain.
Yeah.
One of them's like, what's that? Pointing at a giant horse or monster-looking thing that's lying dead on the ground and already looks like it kind of has decomposed for some reason. And Thor is like, oh, that was a mighty god, that did something godlike and was the god of this, and you don't need to know any more about that because that would waste time, and we all know this movie isn't about wasting time. Let's go joke around with Lady Sif. She's sitting there missing an arm. And that's about how that scene went. You don't really get much more information other than her saying, he's the Godslayer. You got to stop the Godslayer. Someone's got to do something about the Godslayer. I'm going to Valhalla. No, you're not.
Does the fact that the horse god is decaying already have something to do with the powers of the Godslayer?
No. The powers of the Godslayer as far...
See, because you could set that up that way. That would be really cool.
I think they just wanted the scene to look cool, so they just made it look cool by having something decaying on a battlefield, while there's someone that's still clearly alive and hasn't been decaying on the battlefield.
And is there and hasn't been camping for 6 months.
Yeah, these are recent events.
Yeah.
Just like
because you could have made that really cool. You could have been like, oh, the reason the Godslayer is so good at defeating gods is that he drains divine power or something, which causes gods to weaken and decay before he kills them.
They could have. His sword is called the Necro Sword.
Right? Yeah, like it causes necrosis. Right? You could do that. That'd be really cool. But it sounds like they didn't do that.
They didn't do that. As far as I've been able to determine, his powers are that he can move through shadows and he can summon Cthulhu-like creatures from the shadows. In any number, apparently. It doesn't really... You don't really see what the extent of his power is with this sword. You just see that he will stick the sword in the ground and it will create a shadow, and that shadow will stretch forth and creatures will crawl out of it. But throughout the movie, you see him do this 3 or 4 times, and each time there's a different amount of creatures. So it's like he can bring an army anytime he wants to, or he can bring 1 or 2, and they can all move through the shadows with him. So, I mean, he's got a pretty decent ability for, say, wiping out an entire seaside town.
Yeah, it sounds pretty powerful, actually.
So he tries to do that. He's there doing his thing, and Thor shows up.
Yep.
And there's just all these monsters, and
the sword shadow monsters or something else.
The sword shadow monsters are there. They are there, and they're wreaking havoc when Thor arrives there. So
that makes sense, right? Like Godslayer's already left. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so he starts fighting them, and there's all these other people that are like running and screaming in the streets, and a handful of them are fighting back. But it's like these are supposed to be the gods of Asgard living in this town. I don't understand why they're not fighting better, and why so many of them are looking fearful. It made no sense.
Aren't they Asgard? Are they weakened? Are they made human? Are they something wrong with them?
No, there's nothing wrong with them. These are the same gods.
Is it just part of this world's mythos that Thor is really the only really powerful god in Asgard?
He is a very powerful one, but the mythos is that a lot of them are powerful,
and they're all just like running away from these things in the seaside Asgard.
Yes.
Okay.
And they really went to Porker Town on some of the people that played Asgardians. It's just like it's not like they had people that were like these big pot-bellied Vikings running around and crushing monster skulls. No, they look like people that like to do things like how many ice creams can I eat challenge on TikTok. So like not like healthy big, but like unhealthy big, and they're all running around like, yeah, we could totally fight these monsters. It's like, well, what are you, the god of Ben and Jerry's? I don't know. The contrast that they were giving was not good. But that,
I mean, one of the things about Norse mythology that if I remember correctly, is that like the gods in general were paragons of physical fitness for the most part.
Yeah. I mean,
like some of them had a conspicuous like problem with like a crippling of some sort, but like they were all pretty like representative of like what a warrior culture would idealize.
Yeah, these people were infantile. And I don't just mean that in this one scene. I mean in the following scenes, you realize that Asgard has fallen lower than you could ever have imagined. Like when they introduce Asgard, because the love interest from the first movie was Jane Austen, who in the comics is the girlfriend of the guy that ends up becoming Thor. It's so in the comics, Thor is just a guy who finds a stick that has the power of Thor, and he can use that stick to become Thor. And his girlfriend was Jane Austen. Wait, am I saying that right? Not Jane Austen. Jane Foster. Jane Austen is the author. Jane Foster.
Yeah. Okay.
They actually made that joke twice in the movie, and I made that mistake.
What?
No, they the first time they said Jane Fonda. It was the narrator. The narrator was telling the story of how, well, quote unquote story about Thor and Jane Foster, and he calls her Jane Fonda, and then he's like, no wait, I think that was Jane Foster. He does that joke. He does it again. I can't remember. Jodie Foster. He uses Jodie Foster the second time.
No, but the way that you described it just sounds like he just gets her name wrong.
Yes.
Like that's not actually funny.
I mean, it can be, but it also doesn't make sense because this is a guy who is from another planet. So why would he make that mistake?
I don't know.
I mean, I guess it was. It's not the worst joke they told in the movie. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just
okay.
It was just like, if you actually think about that joke for a minute and think about the fact that he shouldn't have known those other two names, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, it's like, that's a forgivable joke. I can forgive that one. I could even chuckle at that one.
Well, no, I mean, he might know those names because he, studied Earth culture, and
that could be true because he knows who Guns N' Roses are.
Yeah.
Which, if you recall, I mentioned them playing Welcome to the Jungle at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, they use a lot of Guns N' Roses music in this movie. They use Sweet Child, they use November Rain. Someone was just having a good old-fashioned GNR day, And
I mean, I'm okay with that.
I am too. I just I think it went one step too far. Not too far. I don't want to say too far. This isn't like a big hang-up, but it was just weird how there was also one kid in the movie whose name was Astrid, who was insisting they call him Axel because he likes Guns N' Roses.
I can forgive that, I think. Yeah, there's nothing terribly wrong with that.
I mean, I guess if the theme of the movie was playing Guns N' Roses songs, then it made sense.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's the narrative.
Yeah, that's the narrative. That is the narrative of all the Thor movies, is that he wanted to
play Guns N'
Roses songs while battling monsters. Let's see. Where are we in the story? Oh yeah, so he's in this battle. He's fighting the bad guy. A lot of shadow creatures, which can apparently immobilize gods pretty easily, so this battle should have been over, I mean, he immediately manages to capture Thor, and it's just like, how did anyone else even fight this guy? What were they doing before Thor showed up that they were able to stop him? Because they all just seem to be running around screaming. And
so why doesn't he... So he captures Thor but doesn't kill him?
Well, he tries to, and Thor manages to get away. Thor is powerful enough to escape the grip of these monsters most of the time, except for the one time when it mattered.
Uh-huh.
But he gets to this town, and they're in the middle of this battle, fighting something called a Godslayer in a city full of gods that are being attacked by shadowy creatures. In the middle of this fight...
Uh-huh.
His old girlfriend, Jane Foster, shows up, wearing his armor and wielding his hammer. And the reason she's wielding his hammer is because he once told his hammer to make sure to protect her, and she has cancer now. And so the hammer called to her and gave her the powers of Thor so that the cancer wouldn't kill her right away. And so now she's running around as a Thor.
Okay.
A coolish idea, except every single interaction that they had was like some awkward teenager, like freshman year high school, what the heck is the opposite sex encounter.
Two people that have already been in a relationship.
Multiple relationships. I'm pretty sure in both their cases, and Thor is thousands of years old, and there was a nice narration to tell us about
I mean with each other, I mean.
Yes.
That's the important one, right? Because you could still be awkward with a new person, but that's the point I'm getting at.
Yeah. So there they are.
Okay.
And not only was it awkward, but they were also there was this brief period where it seemed like they were trying to one up each other, but it didn't go anywhere, and it's just like, what was that about? I don't understand what the point of that was. They were both upset that they felt the other had left them in the relationship. Even though one clearly had, and the other was just like, that was a piece of dialogue that okay, so here was the joke. Thor gets a letter saying that she's leaving him.
Okay. A Dear Thor letter.
Yes. He brings this up and talks about how she left him, and she's like, you're the one that left me. And at first you get this impression that her reasoning is, well, he wasn't really there in his head for a lot of it. Because, as I mentioned before, the narrator felt that tell not show is the way to do things. So he explains to the audience that these two had put up walls between themselves because one of them is a god that lives for thousands of years and knew that one day she wouldn't be there anymore. And the other one is one that is
a human being who will die of cancer shortly.
Well, this was before the cancer. So it was something more like I'm not really sure what her problem was, but it was something to do with she's like this doctor and she's got this career and something wasn't working. I don't know. The movie, I think the movie was clear at one point on what exactly her problem was, but I don't remember it exactly. It seemed kind of vague. But it didn't really matter. The point was they both had some kind of wall between them. And so she writes a letter saying that, she's taken off and they haven't seen each other in years now. And he comes back, says she left him. And he's like, no, you left me. and then he's like, I don't know if they were trying to tell a joke here or if they were serious about this. This is how bad this was. He says, but you're the one that left a letter and left. And she says, you weren't there to see me leave because you had already left. And it's just like, wait, the obvious answer to that is I came back and found the letter.
I got the letter.
and was
I was there to see the letter.
But
clearly I was present enough to read the letter.
Yeah. But instead of him saying that, he says, fair point. And then they just drop it after that. By the way, this conversation happening in the middle of Cthulian death
battle.
creatures tearing this town apart and also kidnapping children.
But now there are two people with Thor powers, and this should be like a really good turnaround scene where like they're on the ropes, and then now there's another person with Thor powers, and they're both they're synced up because even though they've had trouble with their relationship, they kind of get each other, and so they cooperate and they work really well together, and they beat back the enemies, and then they cause the Godslayer guy to have to they got him on the ropes, and then he retreats, and then they have to go through the rest of the movie. Like that's how you would do that if you were a good writer.
Yeah,
or mediocre writer.
That is one way that you could do it that would work.
So that's what they did, right?
No. My friend, you have not seen enough Marvel movies.
That is true. I've seen exactly one Marvel movie.
Was it Iron Man?
Yes.
Yeah, you pretty much hit peak Marvel movie. So
wasn't it the first
yes.
one?
Well, I mean, it was the first of the new frontier of Marvel. There was there were like the Sony Spider-Man movies. There was the
I saw a couple of those. I don't count those as Marvel movies. They weren't. They hadn't started the cinematic universe yet.
Yeah, it was the first cinematic universe one because I think Blade might have been the first Marvel movie, or maybe.
Well,
Elektra,
sure. I haven't seen Blade, but I've heard Blade's pretty good. But yeah, whatever.
Wait, was Elektra the Marvel Elektra? I don't even know. All I know is that Elektra was a bad movie. But yeah, Blade was the first one that I can recall, and it was actually a trilogy. I don't think the second and third movies were all that great. First one definitely stood.
I heard the first one was good.
I mean,
but I haven't heard much about the second or third one. I've heard that the CG did not age
well.
No,
the CG did not age well, but it was still a better movie than at this point 80% of the Marvel movies, possibly more because honest to God, every single one of the first run of the cinematic universe, up to X point, was a rehash of the Iron Man script. It was just like, well, this worked, let's do it again. Same progression of characters in each story.
Right.
But we're back at Thor Town or whatever, Asgard seaside tourist trap. And there's this battle going on, and it's just Jane and Thor talking about what happened in their relationship and also complimenting each other on their outfits. And Thor saying, my outfit looks good on you, ha 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 ha. And then there was also a scene where Thor's axe, Stormbreaker, is jealous of him talking to his old hammer that Jane is now wielding.
Okay.
Which can be funny maybe once.
You could do that.
So this was another.
Is the axe a recurring speaking character?
The first time it happened was kind of funny because the axe sort of sidles in, floating in midair from off screen, like it's looking at him, kind of upset.
Yeah.
That wasn't too bad of a joke. I mean, it was in the middle of a.
No, you could make that funny. Yeah, sure.
But they did it 4 or 5 times throughout the movie, and it just it kept falling flat each time. It was just like, okay, we get it. The axe is jealous of the hammer. I bet money you're going to be using that hammer at some point. So now we've got that scene out of the way. Now they're in the torn up Asgard where all the children have been kidnapped. And did I mention the Old Spice commercial?
What?
When they first introduce us to Asgard, the new Asgard in this movie, apart from it being a tourist trap where they're putting on really bad play versions of Thor Ragnarok, the king of Asgard, who is the woman named Viking that showed up in Thor Ragnarok and just became king of Asgard at the end for whatever reason.
Okay.
She's doing an Old Spice commercial in the vein of the... So the guy that plays one of the gods in Thor, Heimdall, I think he was the guy that did the Old Spice commercials, if I'm remembering correctly.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he's in that franchise, and he does show up in this movie at the end, just as like a cameo, because he also needed another paycheck.
Sure.
And she does an Old Spice commercial, and the joke of it is that they kind of got like a guy playing a pan flute for the Old Spice music in the background, which standalone is pretty funny. Like if they wanted to use that as promotional material for the movie. But no, they were basically showing us that Asgard, as it stands now, is not only a tourist trap and a corporate machination, but it's also highly bureaucratic. And there's all these people standing around in what I think is a rundown church for some reason in Asgard.
Okay.
And the king, Viking, is like going over paperwork and things with people and writing down notes and things. And I was like, oh my God, is this really what this movie's going to do to me? Thank God someone had the sense to say, no, we need to have Thor step in here and make some rousing speech about how they have to save the children, which he accomplished for about 5 seconds before he had to turn around and tell someone that was writing things on a board to stop writing on a board because the chalk was squeaking and it was annoying. At which point I think one of the goats also screamed, and I don't know, I kind of blacked out for a minute.
But blacked out from naked pure rage.
I don't even know if it was rage at that point. It was just like, your brain can't do a full 360 without some ramifications.
My heart gave up for a few seconds. I lost all blood pressure, lost consciousness, then I came back. That sounds... When you say she's doing an Old Spice commercial, do you mean an actual, like someone is filming a commercial, or do you mean that she does some awkward product placement?
Our first glimpse of Asgard is them filming an Old Spice commercial in Asgard.
Okay.
They cut away, and she walks away from the stage, and then it's people talking about how cool Asgard is now because it's this seaside tourist destination, which I'm pretty sure only exists...
Not a freaking mystical land up in...
Yeah, no, it's just a bunch of people in seaside houses while tourists are taking tours and watching plays and seeing Thor's broken hammer, which I'm pretty sure the reason it's a tourist destination is because nobody could come up with a better way for Jane to show up, look at the hammer in its display case all busted up and broken, and then somehow acquire the powers from the hammer.
Fix it?
Which they show off screen. They don't show. It happens off screen.
Wait, what? Huh?
Yeah, so she shows up for a tour of...
What is the deal? What is the deal with movies and television shows these days having all character development happen off screen?
They can't do it. It's disjointed as... I mean, I used a Lego reference earlier, but these things just do not fit together like Legos at all. It's like someone had a mixture of Mega Bloks and Legos and kept trying to put two, completely separate properties together.
Yeah.
So now they've got these kidnapped children. Now Thor's like, all right, well, we need to go get these children, so we'll use my magical bridge, what's it called? The Bifrost, which... is just
the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah, so
right?
he can apparently control it with his axe, which maybe I'm just forgetting because I haven't seen the movies in a while, but I don't remember him being able to do that.
I don't, on some level, it's probably not that big of a deal. He has control of Bifrost. He has to control it somehow. Have him swing his axe around. I don't care.
I would agree with you that it's not that big of a deal if it didn't keep having important parts in the story, such as they realized that they couldn't... Okay, so there's one kid that was kidnapped who is the son of Heimdall, who has his all-seeing eye power. And because he has that power, Thor can reach out to him and find out where they are. So even though he was able to specifically find one person who thought she was dying on a battlefield and teleport right to her, he needed to use this kid's power to get a general idea of where they were so he could teleport to them. But also, he couldn't teleport directly to them because they would have to have the power, quote-unquote, amplified by something, like a ship or something. So they had to attach their screaming goats to a magical boat that they would climb on and be towed by these goats, who apparently can fly. Nobody told us these goats could fly, but they can fly now. Oh, no, I take it back. I'm sorry. That's my mistake. They attach his axe to some contraption on the boat, which now makes it more powerful, so they can create the bridge in front of them that the goats can run on, and they can teleport to these kids.
Okay.
Norse mythology stuff. I can deal with that. I can suspend my disbelief for that.
I mean, it sounds very scattershot.
It really does. The whole thing about him being able to pinpoint someone in one instance when he had no idea where this person was, and these,
or even that it was them that was there.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there's these kids, like a whole bunch of them, with godlike powers that he can't find unless he uses one of these kids' powers to sort of give him an idea. And also, then we need to amplify the power of this axe with goats and a boat.
That's that last part. That last part is where it loses me, because it's like I could see the whole he needs to communicate with this kid that has his god power, and then it's like. And then he uses the bridge to go there. That's cool, but there's the whole it's too many layers.
Well, let's add a few more.
The goats shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be a thing.
That is true. The goats should have been cooked and eaten if they wanted to do a proper joke about these screaming goats. They should have said, "All right, we're going to solve this problem right now." Yeah, they were in Asgard with a bunch of gods. It's barbecue time.
Yeah, but and the boat thing doesn't make sense because Bifrost or Bifrost is a bridge, and boats go under bridges, not over bridges.
Well, I mean, this one was getting dragged across a magical rainbow bridge, but
that's dumb.
Maybe, and by maybe I mean yes, but I mean, if it's Marvel has reached a point where this is the low layer of dumb that. It's just you have to accept if you're going to watch this movie.
I guess. Does it have to be that dumb?
No, it doesn't. They could have done a really good job. The reason I watched this movie, I mean, I've pretty much given up on Marvel movies. I watched this movie because A, Christian Bale was playing the bad guy. B, the bad guy looked like a really serious and vicious bad guy, and I was just like, oh, okay, they got the color scheme for him is black and white, so it's okay, they're gonna have cool backdrops with this black and white motif,
high contrast, and
which
it's gonna be all angular and okay, sure.
And they did pepper us with a few scenes where they actually go to a shadow world that's just black and white, and while they're there, some of the scenery looks cool. I mean, it's all CG, but it's got a gloomy and almost Lovecraftian look to it in a couple of places for a short while. They give us a bit.
Well, sure.
The problem is, Christian Bale is not playing this rage-filled, murderous, vengeful villain that wants to kill all the gods. That is the proposed purpose of the villain he's playing. But they spoil the whole thing when they have him sitting down with these children and talking to them in this really childlike, not creepy, you could imagine if the Joker was telling kids a story and he's clearly being creepy and evil about it.
Yeah.
He was just talking in a really infantile way and kind of looked like a clown while he was doing it. And then he talked about his daughter for a moment and almost kind of looked serious. And then he ripped off the head of one of his creatures to show them something gruesome, because one of the kids had mentioned that Thor was the one that cut off Thanos' head with his axe. And so he's like, oh, well, you were just talking about how cool it was to cut off heads. Well, I mean, what's wrong with this?
I'll just cut off a head.
And these kids are all screaming and all looking afraid. And I'm just looking at this these are the children of Asgard. Asgard is falling faster than the United States is falling, culturally speaking.
Well, they should be disciplined and youthful, but powerful with potential. That's how you depict that. But they didn't do that.
It's they weren't in that Asgard classroom where the teacher was writing words on the board and this is Valor, V-A. It just they were cowering the whole time and terrified of this guy. And then at the end of the movie, I'm just going to jump right there just to give you the contrast.
Sure.
Thor grants some of his power to each of these children, because apparently, even though...
Did he do that?
So when Odin created Mjolnir, he gave the power of Thor to Mjolnir so that anyone who was worthy could wield the power of Thor. Well, apparently these kids could just...
Through Mjolnir.
Yes.
Okay.
And in one of the most disjointed scenes in the entire movie, they are
Yeah.
at the spot where the bad guy has the potential to destroy all the gods in the universe. He is putting his plan into action, and he has an army of his creatures already raised and ready to go. Mm-hmm. In this moment, when they could clearly be, when the bad guy could clearly be attacking the children and Thor, who are all there, Thor tells the kids to run around and just find anything that looks like a weapon in this, ruin-filled place that's just like crumbling marble and rock. And all of these kids run around and pick up a bunch of rocks and things. And then they come back to Thor. And then he puts the power of Thor into all the rocks and things that they picked up so that they can use his power to help him fight these creatures. And then they play the ending to November Rain while these kids are fighting these creatures and Thor, heads off to fight the villain.
Okay. That sounds... I don't even have like a way to make that good.
It is the equivalent of when someone brings a Make-A-Wish kid into the ring in WWE. That's kind of what happened there. Except none of these kids were Make-A-Wish kids. They were just actors.
No, they're the children of gods. They should be.
Well, I mean, even in the sense of like maybe if this was like a cool thing they were doing for children in this Marvel movie, they were all just actors. I mean.
Do they do the weapons, like the stones that they bring, they like turn into weapons, or are they just stones?
No, they're just stones that are firing electrical bolts everywhere, and now all of these kids are jumping around like Thor, and it's just why? Okay. My question, of course,
this sounds bad.
Why didn't he do this when they were attacking the village? Would be my question. Like I assume they have weapons in Asgard.
There's a lot of they should. They're the gods of like the most. Yeah, they should. Does Thor lose his Thorness when he does this?
No, he's still fine.
So, like, why hasn't he just done this whenever it was necessary?
That is a very good question. And if I may, next question.
Yeah. Okay.
So, jumping back.
This sounds bad, question mark.
I mean, it is bad, and it's also very annoying, because you have to remember that every once in a while there's just a goat screaming for no reason while all of this is happening. Almost every scene I'm describing to you, at some point, there's an interruption of goats screaming.
Do the goats faint, too?
The goats do not faint, no.
What? Wait, so they did the screaming goat meme, but they didn't do the fainting goat meme.
If it happened, I didn't notice it. Maybe there was a narration saying that one of the goats fainted. I don't know.
I would assume that you would remember that.
Maybe.
I'm just pointing out that there's some low hanging fruit here that they were like fastidiously refusing to pick.
I mean, there was barely a movie here. I mean, so there were events that could be said to be a story in conjunction.
Yeah.
But
I guess.
So now we've got these children that are kidnapped, and for some reason, the people of Asgard aren't going to help Thor fight. I don't know why. They're just. I think there was some reason. It's like, these are all your children, you're all gods. You're going to help fight the bad guy, right? And it's like, no. We'll go build an army of gods. We're going to go to this place where all these powerful gods reside, and we're going to present our case and be like, hey, we got some Asgardian children kidnapped. Help us out. We need an army to go fight this guy that's killing gods. So they go to do that. When they get there, instead of presenting themselves, especially in Thor's case, so Thor is actually the only god that's there. But instead of presenting himself as a god and saying, I'm a god, I can come in here and I need to talk to some other gods, he says, we'll disguise ourselves and sneak in, and then Viking is with them. The king of Asgard went with them, but none of the subjects went. So it's like really loyal there.
Yeah.
It's like, well, thank you, retainers. Have at you. Ha. But anyway, she knocks out a bunch of gods, steals their togas, and that happens off screen. You don't actually get to see that. She just comes back with some togas,
What?
and they put on disguises.
What? Huh? Off screen? What? Are you serious?
Yes. She just shows up and says, "No, your idea for a disguise is stupid, Thor. Here's actual disguises." Oh yeah, they're all making fun of each other constantly.
Togas.
It's like
togas aren't disguises.
Well, they're visiting the Greek gods now, so togas are.
I'm all right with that, but no, like a hood.
No, you don't understand. These togas
like a mask
have hoods.
Is a disguise.
These togas have hoods.
Togas can't have hoods.
These togas do. These are Marvel togas.
So they have hooded togas that they use to disguise themselves as Greek gods to try to enlist help from other gods to build an army to fight the Godslayer. Do I have that right?
Yes. So they're at this place.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
They go into this place wearing these disguises, have a seat, and Thor is getting excited because Zeus is about to show up, and he's like, "Oh man, Zeus is like the oldest god, and I really respect him. He's quite a hero." And he comes down from the clouds, and he's not a morbidly obese slob, but he's kind of a slob, and he has a heavy accent, and so
okay.
I guess that they thought it would be funnier if he spoke with the heavy accent. But he wasn't telling jokes really, except for the movie liked to tell you when you were supposed to be accepting it as a joke by telegraphing a lot. So they brought up his first point of the meeting was, when they were going to schedule the great orgy for the gods, and they kept going back to this orgy joke over and over again. And almost immediately,
I can see them doing that. Yeah, sure, you could make that funny.
Yeah, I mean, you could. They didn't, but you could.
Yeah, okay.
So Zeus pulls out his own weapon. Like Thor's got his hammer. Well, Zeus has this lightning bolt looking plasticky weapon thing, and he throws it around and impresses the audience. And so Thor's like, "Wow, we could use that weapon to help."
The audience. Wait, stop. The audience of the movie or the audience in the movie?
The audience in the movie. They're all awed and wowed by Zeus, who they've probably seen their entire godly existence doing this.
Yeah.
And he's just putting on a show for him for a minute, and Thor is talking about how they could really use that weapon to fight, the guy that they are fighting, apparently. I mean, they took this hiatus, but whatever. And he gets a bit too loud talking about something, and so Zeus gets angry and says, "Why don't you take the stage and tell us what you have to say?" At which point it's like...
Which is what he wanted.
Yes, which is exactly what he wanted. So at which point it's like, what was the point of these disguises? Why didn't they just walk in and sit down? It didn't look like anyone was stopping them. There were no guards that I saw, and if there were guards, who among those guards was going to be like, we're going to tell Thor, god of Asgard, that he can't come in.
And go away.
Why was that a thing? So he gets an audience with Zeus, and he makes his case about these kids that are kidnapped, and Zeus is like, no, we're not going to worry about the God Slayer because he can't actually reach his goal, which you'll find out later was completely true. But Thor starts, doing his thing where he's like, "Oh, you're not even honorable gods anymore." Makes Zeus angry. Zeus basically does like a He-Man movie thing where he ties Thor up in front of the chamber, and then he blasts away his disguise, but haha, funny, it's got to be a joke. He accidentally blows away all of his clothes. And so now the Jane and Viking, I thought Viking was a lesbian, but whatever. At this point, they're both just staring at him naked, and they were about to take action, but they decided to sit back and eat popcorn now that Thor is naked in front of them. So that's what we're dealing with here. So now Thor's pleading his case, butt naked in front of this entire council of gods, which, they're gods. I guess that's what they do. And
there is a reason that for the root of the word testify.
Yes. Yeah, yes. There.
Are they making that joke there? Do they make that joke?
No. That's too highbrow.
Really? They don't make the. But that was literally a Greek thing, wasn't it? Am I crazy?
I'm pretty sure it was. Yes.
Why didn't they make that joke? It's an obvious joke.
Why make an obvious joke?
Like they ask him to testify, and he starts to speak, and they stop him, and they say, "No, testify." And then you get a shot of Thor naked, but only like from like the stomach up, and his hands move surreptitiously below the frame, and then he starts to talk again. Like, you make that joke.
You do it, but you do if you're like, it's supposed to...
A mediocre or better writer.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of that there. There's also the fact that, this is like... Disney's pretending that they're still making a kids movie, even though there's things happening in this movie that...
You can't have an orgy joke in a kids movie.
Apparently you can. I mean, that was my first thought when that joke happened, was like... But I thought that this was being presented largely for kids. I mean, the way that the movie was progressing was so infantile, I was like... I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt that it was for a younger audience, but then they got to the orgy joke, and I'm like, well, that's all out the window now. I mean,
I guess you could argue that most kids don't know what an orgy is.
Well, I mean, this isn't exactly like Bugs Bunny stuff, where it's like the adults will get the adult jokes and the kids will get the kid jokes, and you're not going to really see any crossover there. This was them straight up talking about having orgies, and then bringing it up multiple times, and then telling Thor that he wasn't invited to the orgy anymore. At some point, some kid is going to say, "What's an orgy?"
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to make those jokes carefully.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you got kids on the playground that are reenacting the scene saying, "You aren't invited to the orgy anymore," and teachers like, "Oh, what's going on out here?"
What the hell? Yeah.
So eventually what happens is they steal Zeus's weapon. Zeus tries to kill Thor with his lightning bolt. Thor catches it and throws it back. Makes some offhand comment about the real sound of thunder, and supposedly kills Zeus, but you find out at the end of the movie, not really, so there's that.
Yeah, you'd expect that.
Yeah, and so Zeus outright told him before they all started fighting that he was afraid of the God Slayer, but they were all much safer here, and the God Slayer couldn't really do anything.
Yeah.
And they're not going to help him at all. They're just like, no, we're not going to help you. It's just, it's an Asgard problem. You deal with it. Which, makes Thor angry.
Which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's like, this is an entire scene where no progress was made other than for them to steal Zeus's weapon, which did not end up really mattering. I mean, they used the weapon, but not in any significant way where it's like, yeah, this is much more... Well, no, you didn't get the impression that it was...
This sounds really stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing that it's not stupid. So
that's
why we're having this conversation.
Here's how you do this. You have Thor and Zeus fight. Zeus basically fakes his own death so that he can bestow the thunder power onto Thor without dishonoring himself, without losing face. And then Thor goes and fights the bad guy, and the Zeus thunder is instrumental in the fight. And then Zeus reveals that he wasn't actually dead, and Thor's like, I see, and he gives him the thunder back, the lightning back at the end of the movie. Like, that's how you would write that.
Well, they couldn't do that specifically. I can understand why they didn't do that. That is a better idea. I mean, the idea that Zeus does want to help but doesn't want to lose face is a good idea, but he actually legitimately doesn't want to help Thor in this instance, and not only that,
what?
They were using the whole Greek god thing to set up for another movie, because apparently Hercules is going to be fighting Thor in the next movie.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
So it was a wasted scene.
Are they going to still have Kevin Sorbo be Hercules?
I don't think it was Kevin Sorbo.
Oh.
I don't know who it was, but I don't recognize these actors.
Yeah.
They had
I mean, that wasn't a real thing that I thought they were going to do, because Kevin Sorbo is like 60 now.
Yeah. There's this whole fight going on in this...
I have that right? Like, there was a TV show called The Adventures of Hercules, and Kevin Sorbo was Hercules.
Yeah, it was very short-lived. I remember watching it. There was a scene where he threw I actually... there's a scene where he throws a spear through a bunch of skeletons, and they break the fourth wall as they're flying backward. All with the spear caught in all their ribs. He throws it. He throws it and like latches them to a wall. And I'll never forget how the skeletons sort of turn to the camera and click their teeth at the audience right before they get trapped against the wall. I had that in mind during something I was working on a story, and I had that scene in mind when I did that. So it was kind of funny that you bring that up. But yeah, I remember that show being like, I think it was during the time of Xena, Warrior Princess, and they were trying to they were contemporaneous. They were going to do like crossovers and things, and I don't know if it ever happened, but Hercules was not a long-lived show.
Okay. All right. No. So go on.
Yeah,
go
just
go
a little aside there, something more entertaining, because that show could literally be the pits for its time, and it would be better than what we have now.
Yeah.
So they defeat Zeus, they steal his weapon, and that is the only reason that entire scene and the entire sneaking thing had to happen, which the sneaking thing didn't have to happen. There was no reason they couldn't just walk in and be like... he interrupted anyway and ended up having...
Here's my case, and...
So there was no reason they couldn't just walk in and be like, hey, we've got a kidnapping going on in Asgard and we need your help. Like, I can't think of any reason why they thought they had to sneak in there. It's almost like a scene was missing.
No, I can't either. It's like the missing scene.
But that's what it's like. It's like, here's this scene. We're going to Lego brick it together with this scene, and the two Lego bricks are different colors, but whatever. That's what,
and they don't fit together at all.
That's what every act of this movie is like. Every act, every scene, just kind of stuck together willy-nilly. And
why would they do this?
Because they're...
Like, why would Marvel Disney do this?
Because they're taking scripts from the script bucket, and they're sitting down with a team of people who call themselves writers but aren't, and they're deciding what parts of the script they want to change, what they want to keep, and what jokes they want to put in.
I just want to, like, I feel like I have to underline the fact that I'm not actually a writer. Like, maybe someday I will be an accomplished writer, but I'm not. And, I mean... And you are a writer, and like we're sitting here and we're coming up with.
Let's not.
You're a little more writer than I am, but like we're both saying obvious things that like are like, well, we're not very good at this, but this would be how you would do this, and it's like, did they do that? No, they did not do that. They did something stupider. Like, how is this? How is this happening? How is a multi-million-dollar movie having this happen to it?
There's no direction. Like, the art of directing and writing is gone because they have managed to weed out anyone with talent and basically, I don't want to say lock them out of the industry, but you have multiple problems, right? So you have you have something successful happens and it starts a franchise, and then a bunch of people want to get their friends in on working on these things, and you have a lot of nepotism. For one thing, I would say that's actually a smaller part of the problem.
Oh.
The bigger part...
Okay.
So you've got the same problem you have in comics, where you're dealing with teams of writers, all who have their own vision, and all who want a piece of their vision to make it into this story. And there are people out there, and I am sure of this because in the writing circles that I have seen, I no longer see young writers who are in it, like... for for being part of an actual writing career and doing things that that a writer would do. It's a lot of it is like the Twitter-like mentality and the search engine optimization mentality, and looking at charts and trends and yes, in a script. These people are sitting back and saying, all right, well, we have a company vision, and we also have writers that want to have a piece of their vision in part of the company vision. And so there's a lot of, like, I want to use the word underhanded, but it's not quite that dirty. It's not like people being murdered in back rooms, but it's like, hey, I really want to have this line in the movie, or I really think we should do this, and a lot of...
But you could do that if the lines were good.
Well, yeah, but it's...
Like if you had a team of mediocre writers... Several of them would have thought of the ideas that we thought of just talking about this movie, on how to improve the movie, or how things should have happened.
Well, you and I are talking about it as friends who respect each other and who might want to share ideas because they're good ideas. We're talking about groups of people who are not friends, are probably competing with each other in the hopes that they'll be the one to, be able to write a bigger part
of the Netflix deal.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But there, all of these writers sitting around coming up with these ideas that are going to go to executives that are going to send the ideas back and say, we need to change this, this, and this. And they're so used to working in this way that it's no longer a creative process. Now it's a process of, all right, well, we know we want to have some funny jokes for everyone to chuckle at. We know we want this in the movie. We know what the tone of the movie, what we want. And no one's actually sitting down and saying, but why don't we just, make a movie that people will love and...
Well, no, but I mean, it's not even that. It could just be like one of them is like, well, the obvious thing to do here to get these two plot points to fit together is this. And they're like, oh, yeah, sure, we can do that.
I suspect...
But they didn't do that.
I suspect that there's some pettiness involved where someone's like...
Even with pettiness,
No, seriously.
Like I said,
that's a good idea. That was that person's idea. I don't want that idea in the movie, so I'm going to, talk to someone to explain to them why it's a bad idea to put that in the movie. And since you're dealing with executives that aren't really looking at it, or not even executives, God, if you're just dealing with the accountants, it's like, oh yeah, well I can see where having this having this funny Old Spice commercial thing in the movie will actually get us more money than doing something that would explain to us what has happened to Asgard and what these people are now.
Well, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying, I find it very surprising that the ideas that I've been pushing forward throughout this conversation are not, clever. They're just this is obvious. Considering that I want to write a story, this is how you would put these pieces together. I feel like if you had a team of 10 mediocre writers, that 7 of them would come up with pretty much the exact thing I came up with. So what this is saying is that there aren't that they have these teams of 10 writers, and not even one of them is mediocre.
Well, that's kind of the point I was getting at, because if this is the situation you have in these writing rooms, let's not even forget that every once in a while, an executive looks at an idea, says, that's really stupid, who hired this guy, and gets rid of someone who may have been really good at things and made just one stupid idea, But you also have a situation where, imagine you're someone that's worked in Hollywood for a while, and you've written so many great things, and you haven't been able to get anyone to so much as look at a single script, or you had a part for a movie that was really good, and it's everyone around you is just now we're not going to use that, and you've done this for 20 years and none of your ideas have ever been used, but you've been collecting a paycheck. At what point is it just well, I've got money now, I should probably go do something else because this isn't working out? I think all the good writers are just gone. They're all trying to get deals with other studios. They're all they're all slightly bigger names than a guy who's working with an independent film studio. So they're like, I'll go to these people and show them my idea, and maybe I can work with this independent studio and they'll actually respect me because I worked on a Marvel movie. I think there might be a lot of that going on, a lot of shifting around, because just judging on this movie alone, I do not see people caring about these Marvel movies much longer. I think that they're going to have to make a drastic change in either what their top thing is or how they present things, because nobody is going to care after, maybe they can get another 10 of these going of this quality, but at some point people are just going to be like, there's not actually a movie here. I'm not entertained. The jokes aren't funny, and the writing is, let's just call it atrocious. I mean, someone picked up the Necrosword of Hollywood scripts and just started killing writing. That's what happened here.
I guess.
I mean,
it's kind of sad.
We barely covered any of the movie, and there's no substance to what's going on. They spend 10 minutes on that boat with Jane and Thor talking about their past relationship, which they already did in a village that was burning
could be
to the
good,
ground.
but that could be good. and we described ways that it could be good, and then you told me how it actually happened in the movie, and it wasn't good.
Well, I mean, just trying to be fair on the fact that, good in terms of a movie can be subjective. I'm sure that there's people that eat this up. I'm sure there's people that watch this and just like, yeah, all right, I got to see some Marvel characters fight a bad guy. The fight scenes were not very good, by the way. They were all... I think Thor did the slow motion leaping thing with like a side shot of him leaping at a horde of enemies at least 5 times in this movie.
Ooh. In slow-mo?
Yes.
See, you can get away with that like once or twice, right? But like 5 times? Jeez.
Twice, I think, in the beginning, in the very first scene, where he's fighting that random army for no reason. Which I feel like that is a reference to something that happened in the comics that only a diehard Thor comic fan would know. But to me, it's just, why was this scene here?
Yeah.
That's another lost art, doing references. It's like if you spend half your movie for this reference that no one's going to get, then you've got a big audience of people that just don't get it.
Right. And you can do that, but it has to be a very small portion of the movie.
Yeah. That was the entire opening to the movie.
Huh. Very weird.
I mean, it's a really simple thing to do. It's like, these are the things that I have to tell the audience about these characters and about the world that they're in order for anyone who just stumbles upon this movie to understand what's going on. And these are the things that I can pepper this movie with, so anyone that already knows all of this stuff can say, oh, they put that in there, that's kind of cool. Oh, they put that in there, that's kind of cool.
Sure.
They definitely didn't need to open up with a pointless battle scene with Thor, because I'm going to get the impression throughout the movie that he's someone who can fight.
Well, I mean, it's a reasonable way to start a story. It is the end of an adventure, and now we're starting a new adventure. But it wasn't
the end of an adventure, because there was no in between. Like at the end of Endgame, he disappears with the Guardians of the Galaxy. At the beginning of this movie, a narrator tells us that he went on a bunch of adventures with them that we don't get to see, and now they're here and they're going to be parting.
I'm fine with that, though. I mean, that sucks, but like whatever. We can't tell every story in this movie. This movie is about.
Well, I mean, I assume that there's going to be a movie
about.
that they make that tells us what happened between them if they ever want to. I mean, maybe not. I don't know, but
maybe.
But the point is, the battle they had where they separated.
Yeah.
Didn't tell any extra part of the story. We didn't get anything other than at the very end of it.
Well, no, all it's there to do is just to be an eye catch, you know? Like, I can understand that for the purpose of getting people that are watching a movie to, like, look up and pay attention, right? That's what I'm thinking. It's like, we have something flashy, we have something, interesting, we have something that is a callback, and then people are like, cool, I'm in, That I can imagine that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm here to complain about the movie, so I'm picking at every fault. But it didn't really hook me. Like, the opening just kept bothering me with the whole thing about them making everything was a joke in this movie. This movie it's not taking itself seriously to a whole other level. There was no point in the movie where you really had any kind of scope of just how sinister the villain was and just how horrible the thing he was trying to do actually was. And, I mean, he kind of won at the end of the movie, but had a change of heart, so there's that. Which, I mean, that was fine too. It wasn't like a bad one. It was, the sword was destroyed at the end of the movie, and so you can kind of assume he was released from any control it had over him. He still was vengeful against the gods, but then
now he's impotent.
Yes. But he also... He had made it to the center of the universe where this being called Eternity would...
Where there's a big black hole.
Yes, and it's going to grant him a wish. The black hole is going to grant him one wish, and you assume throughout the movie that he's going to wish for all the gods to be destroyed. And Thor actually leaves him when he makes it this far, and he's mortal, and Thor could easily stop him now. and says, you know what, go ahead and make your wish, whatever. You know, the person I love is over here dying. And then the guy realizes that, you know, or actually, no, Thor actually had to tell him. I don't know why he didn't realize this. He can bring his daughter back to life. So that's what he does.
That's what I would have done. That's the obvious thing to do. Well, I mean,
it was the obvious thing throughout the whole movie. The minute they said that it would grant a wish, it's like, so he's just going to bring his daughter back, right? Like, all of this is just about that. But it turned out that...
Well, okay, so here's the thing, is I can understand if the sword had some kind of control on him. I could understand that it would pervert his wish into making his wish in a negative one instead of a positive one. Like that's how you would handle that. Is you'd say we can't. Yeah, I mean we can let him make the wish, but we can't let him make the wish when the Necrosword is controlling him, because that will go poorly. You know. So that's what they did, right?
Well, yeah, no, that's what happened. Like Thor actually says, you know, you could wish to destroy all the gods, or you could bring your daughter back. You know, the choice is yours. Make your wish, and that was not a bad ending to an otherwise.
Well, that's yeah.
It made sense.
That part
the ending makes sense.
Seems
it's
to
like
make
the
sense.
only thing in the movie that made sense. There was just all of this stuff about him and his former relationship with this girl that now has cancer and is going to die at the end of the movie because. Apparently, the hammer that was also killing her while she was using it. You know, there's a couple of things to nitpick in what happened at the end of the movie with the sword being destroyed. So, Thor's hammer was destroyed by his sister in the previous movie. It was just a crumple of rocks, but for some reason Jane was able to use it, and they kept doing this thing where she would throw the hammer and it would split and the rocks would fly out, or the pieces of the hammer would fly out and kill enemies, and then they would come back and form the hammer again. So when they shattered the Necrosword, she sucked up the pieces of the sword into the hammer. And now this was the part that I found this funny. This was one of them unintentionally funny things that happened in the movie. She smashes the hammer into the ground. And then the Necrosword turns to dust. So they smashed the hammer, which did not destroy... Or no, they smashed the sword, which did not destroy the sword, because the sword started to recollect itself. But then taking the pieces of the sword that had been smashed and putting them in a hammer and then smashing them again somehow destroyed the sword. I didn't get that part. I mean, I'm cool with it. It's like, okay, it's actually destroyed now. Maybe there was like one piece that they just had to destroy and didn't hit it.
It's the extra step that does it for some reason. Yeah,
it is the sword that must be smashed twice.
Or at least it must be smashed while it's inside something else.
Yes, that would actually be a funnier rule. It'd be like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure rules going on here or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It simultaneously felt like there was a lot going on while there was nothing going on. It was like, there's a God Slayer. I'll go ask someone about the God Slayer. It's someone I know. Okay, now I'm going back to the village where I would have found this out anyway. Hey, that village is being attacked. Hey, there's the God Slayer. Hey, he kidnapped a bunch of children.
Yeah.
All right, we got to follow him. Before we follow him, better go talk to these other gods that aren't going to help us. All right, we'll steal one of their weapons. All right, now we'll follow him. All right, that weapon didn't really help us at all in any way whatsoever. Other than, and this is the part that really gets me about this movie. He's teleporting around on the Bifrost with his axe. It turned out the way to get to the center of the universe required using Thor's axe. Which, when they initially find him after he kidnapped the children... Gore manages to get the axe away from them just as they're teleporting away. So now they don't have the axe. Now at this point I'm like, wait, how are they going to get back to him to stop him now? Especially if he can just teleport everywhere. And furthermore, why is he able to wield this axe? I mean, one of the whole points of Thor is like...
Yeah, don't you have to be chosen or something?
Yeah. But apparently he can. Apparently he can just teleport everywhere and use this axe as a key. So now... Thor's got Zeus's weapon, and apropos of nothing, he's just able to teleport back to the bad guy with Zeus's weapon when he's ready.
What?
But, like, there's these children that are kidnapped that are
Yeah.
being menaced by this guy who now has the key to the destruction of the gods in his grasp and is putting his plan into action as we speak. And Thor takes time out of all of that happening to go talk to Viking and Jane, who are both in the hospital, Jane dying of cancer, and Viking with, like, a shattered leg bone or something, so she can't fight anymore, because, that's how Vikings are. They sprain something and they're done.
Well, I mean, usually a Viking's military career ends when they take an arrow to the knee.
Granting that, she didn't take an arrow to the knee.
Okay.
I mean, she was sitting on a bench, looking absolutely fine. And this is the king of Asgard. It's just like they couldn't have picked a worse way to present her. She was just sitting on a bench, like, yeah, I can't join you because I'd pretty much just get killed, and that would be bad for you. You're pretty much going to have to.
I can't kill you. My leg hurts.
Yeah. She outright tells him, "You're going to have to go this one alone." And I'm like, this is supposed to. They replaced her. Thor told her she could be the king of Asgard instead of him because she'd A, probably do a better job, and B, he had to go, quote unquote, find himself. And this is the king of Asgard, this total wuss that's, she was acting tough throughout this whole movie, and she's like, oh, look at all the weapons I've got, I'm so cool. And now a sprained ankle is taking her out of commission. I can understand why Asgard has fallen so far that the people aren't even fighting in their own village anymore.
I guess so, yeah.
And I mean, hop on your Pegasus horse and, okay, it gets better. I didn't even realize this at the time. Thor convinces Jane not to go with him to fight because she could take up the hammer again and she'd be able to fight. The cancer wouldn't be killing her then. But it would probably kill her faster once she, released the power.
Give up the hammer. Yeah.
So she says, okay, fine, I won't go. But apparently she can, like, feel Thor's pain when he's in battle fighting against Gore and the Necrosword.
Okay.
And she does show up at the end of the movie riding Viking's Pegasus horse without Viking. Viking still couldn't show up. I mean, Jane was dying of cancer and was able to make it, but Viking was like, now this leg,
It's like there was that Family Guy skit where he's like in the middle of the thing. And he just goes, for like 3 minutes straight.
Yeah. So Jane shows up to fight alongside her cancer to help save Thor from this guy, and they battle against him and bring him to his knees. But there was something that kind of didn't get explained very clearly. So there were these gates in Asgard that allowed them to teleport places. For some reason, Thor didn't use the gates that could teleport him.
Well, he has the Bifrost thing.
Well, the gates use the Bifrost. They're supposed to teleport him using the Bifrost.
Okay.
Which only his axe can do otherwise, I guess.
Okay.
But they also needed to have a special ship to amplify the power of the axe to let them get there. The axe is apparently better at it than the gates.
Wait, they needed the ship. Well, they needed the ship to amplify it for the axe, but they don't need a ship to amplify it for the gates. So the gates are better than the axe.
Well, no, because the gates couldn't take them to the bad guy initially when they found the children. They needed the axe to do that. So I'm guessing that the axe.
So the gates couldn't go there, but the axe plus boat can go.
Yes, the axe plus boat can go, but also Zeus's lightning bolt can go.
Mm-hmm.
So he can also use that. But somehow Jane Foster can also go with Thor's old hammer, which didn't have that power. So I'm assuming she used the gates, which weren't able to get to the place that they needed to go before. Which
is there something that he did to make it so that people could come there after he arrived?
No, because he specifically did not want her to go because she would die.
No, but there might be other reinforcements that he would be letting in.
No, he used children to fight the battle. Children that were already there that picked up rocks.
It's very hard to look cool when you're trying to hit someone with a rock in your hand.
I mean, the rocks are shooting lightning bolts. I guess it's okay. I think one of them found a pipe wrench. I didn't understand that part. I'm sure I saw someone swinging a pipe wrench.
I'm all right with it.
I mean, it's happening in a place called the Shadow Realm, where they're on a black and white planet where there's... I don't know... Or... No, they were in the center of the... That's right, they went to a totally different place. Wait a minute. Hang on. So now, now Thor has teleported using Zeus's weapon to a totally different place, which he somehow knew where this was. I'm assuming that he just used that kid's powers again off screen to see where they went, which was something that Jane couldn't do. Also something that they weren't able to follow unless they had extra power from a boat. I don't know if I can stress that enough, boat power. And also they had these gates that couldn't get the job done to go to this other place when they knew where it was. Now they don't know where it is. Only Thor knows, apparently, I'm guessing, because we didn't actually see him get that knowledge. And Jane is just there on a Pegasus horse with her hammer.
Can the Pegasus home in on Thor?
I'm gonna guess no. But
is that its power? Maybe that's its power.
But I can assume yes, because it's the only thing that makes sense at this point.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, they were willing to interrupt that fight in the village with them talking about their past relationship. You think they'd be willing to interrupt their fight here for him to be like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed like the rules of teleportation were like one of convenience.
There's a lot of that these days in movies. Convenience as a plot device.
It's one of them things where it's just like, I've got to double my suspension.
How did they get there? Well, they had to get there.
Double your suspension of disbelief going forward. That's pretty much how it goes. And then it still is a disjointed, annoying mess. Did I mention that the goats screamed during the fight with the other gods? Where it's just like...
I was trying to forget about that, so you've reminded me. Thank you for that.
Yeah, they screamed during that. They screamed during the... a lot in the open. They just kept screaming, and like that's how the movie opened. They, 5-10 minutes in, they get these goats, and they're just on the ship with the Guardians of the Galaxy, screaming constantly. One of the characters even threatens to shoot them, and they just keep screaming. And it's just like, this is how you wanted to open this movie?
Apparently it is.
You're just like in a theater, and 10 minutes in, for almost a minute and 30 seconds straight, you just hear goats screaming, and just like...
Did you watch this on TV
I
or
watched
in a
it on
theater
TV.
or what?
Good God, thank you that I watched it on television. I mean, I know the villain of the movie was upset with the gods that they never did anything for him, despite how loyal he was. But I mean, I am so thankful that I didn't see this movie in the theater. Gore was wrong, that's all I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
I mean, granted, the gods let this movie exist.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, I mean, I didn't actually talk about every scene in the movie, and there was a lot to go over, but I think that's the general idea, is just there's no direction to these movies anymore.
Disjointed, bad jokes, misses a lot of obvious plot things that could make it make sense.
I mean, they had like two cool, I don't want to say cool fight scenes, because the actual fighting is not very interesting, but the scenes themselves were, cool, and like you said, it, looked flashy, so it can catch your interest.
Yeah.
The black and white scenes were pretty neat, except for the one that looked like they were hanging out in, like, some research station. I didn't understand what the plastic tent flaps were for in that scene.
Entry.
Yeah, something like that. And they had a lot of good cinematics for Thor and Gore and the Necrosword to be posed, just like getting that cool looking shot. I'll credit where it's due. Unfortunately, you would think they would have had a lot more of those, given the tone that this movie was allegedly going to have, but didn't.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I feel like Thor got home and was like, were the stakes high? I feel like they were high, but I also kind of feel like we were just...
I honestly don't feel like they were high.
Well, I mean, the stakes were that every god would be killed. And that might be a high stake for the gods.
Well, no, they weren't, because Zeus had already told them that wasn't the stakes.
Well, no, Zeus knew that Gore couldn't succeed unless he had Thor's hammer. Thor's axe. Thor's axe was the linchpin. That was the key that opened the gate to eternity.
Oh, I see.
I forgot to mention that. Or I did in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this as disjointed as the movie gave it to me, so only slightly more entertaining.
I'm cool with that. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. For a movie I'll never see, yeah, it's more entertaining.
I definitely, I had more fun getting that off my chest than I had watching the movie. I seriously thought it was just going to be like, all right, it won't be that great, but at least I can just, tune out for a bit and just enjoy a bit of mindless action. And it was just like, oh God, these Marvel movies have gotten so bad now. I can't even do that anymore.
I can turn my brain off, but not that
I just kept
off.
thinking, why did they spend so much money on this movie?
Yeah.
Like, Thor's costume didn't even look like it was... It started to look more and more cosplay as the movie went on.
How can that be?
Like, at one point he was wearing this cape that looked like it was made out of vinyl padded material, and
Weird.
I didn't understand the choice for it, but then I looked at it again a couple of times and I was like, is he wearing different clothes this time? I just don't know what was going on. I don't understand.
That's bizarre.
Even from a corporate perspective, what image are they trying to present? What product are they trying to sell? What did they expect to reap from this movie? Because I see no potential in it anywhere for anything. There was when they were visiting the gods, there was also a god of dumplings, which seriously looked like it was stuck in there just so the next day on Twitter, people that were into Asian things could be like, oh, that was really cool, did you see that? And it also stuck out like a sore thumb compared to the other CG.
Uh-huh.
Like, it looked like that thing from Big Hero 6, the big blobby-looking, white ghost-looking thing.
I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever.
Doesn't matter. I don't think I can watch Marvel movies anymore. I can't submit myself to this anymore.
It might be time to stop, yeah.
Justin, you gotta get away. You gotta stop. No, but it might be good this time. Someone might actually write something.
No, they won't.
No, this is just disjointed nonsense that they pulled out of a bucket of script. No, nobody's writing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gotten that base at this point, where it's just like, hey, we want to do, say, a Godzilla movie. We want to make a Godzilla movie. And some guy's like, all right, well, hang on a second. Let me just reach into the bucket here. Here's a script. See if you can put Godzilla in this. And
no, but we wanted to write an original script.
And then the person looking at it is just like, oh, okay, so this... Oh, okay, what's the name of this one? Generic Military Script number 478. All right, we can work with this. Yep, got...
You think they have 478 different military generic scripts?
You think they don't?
I would think that the number would be much smaller than 478.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's copy-paste from the previous 477, but...
oh, goodness.
It's like almost all movies that are coming out that are big-budget movies are like these... random actor that looks the same as every other, Marine shaved head looking actor, military propaganda movie. And then sometimes they stick a franchise on it, like Battleship.
Mm-hmm. Battleship, the movie where they had to get Liam Neeson out of the movie so that he wouldn't solve the problems in the movie.
Yeah. They did the same with Bryan Cranston in Godzilla.
That's fair.
That's just the thing now. Because they got to have that generic bullheaded Marine-looking dude. I'm not sure if it's the same guy or if it's different ones in every movie anymore. I really can't tell.
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. If it mattered, I would look at the credits.
There you go.
I'm not going to look at the credits.
Yeah, I guess so. That's fair. I guess we could call this one here?
We can. I mean, if there's one last thing I would say, it's... I'm not upset. I'm just tired.
You're just disappointed.
Not even disappointed. It's just I'm done with this. This has been over a decade, and now it's just completely obvious that nobody is interested in actually telling a story anymore.
Well, why would they be when they can make millions and millions of dollars without doing so?
It's just spend tons of money memeing, but don't make the memes any good. That is Hollywood.
That sounds like a pretty accurate description.
I can't see it any other way. It's all bad memes.
The good, the bad, and the memely?
One memed over the cuckoo's nest?
Did somebody say meme Donald's?